What can I say about Will Hull? Will is a really good friend of mine, but that is not why I invited him on the show today. The reason he is on the show talking to you is because he is on the top 5 of most successful real estate investor in my book. Will really got this figured out. His operations buy about 160 to 180 houses a year, and he's not involved in the day-to-day aspect of the operation. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is for you if you are looking to scale up your house buying business. Also, I want to send a big thank you to our supporters, Aggie TX05, Country is Brad, and HVA franchise owner for leaving your glowing reviews. Really, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you enjoy the show, please rate us, write a review, and share this great episode with a friend. This will help spread the words and inspire others. Now, let's get to the intro. Hey ballers, welcome to episode 117. With me is Will Hull from Indianapolis, Indiana. Well, hey Will, it only took about 8 months, but here you are. So thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So what are you working on today?
Well, I had a breakfast with a fellow investor that's from out of town that part of the same mastermind I'm in, and so I had breakfast with him, caught up with him, and then I'm off looking at houses that we're doing construction on. So I'm heavily involved in the construction part of our business. So that's my job and that's my afternoon. We got a bunch of stuff going on right now. Obviously, it's our busy season, so that's what Thursday consists of. I usually have meetings in the front half of the week, and then the back half is usually, for whatever else I need to get done.
So you buying about what, 180, 160 a year?
Yeah, we're right around that 160, 170 mark. We're on track now, so we're averaging roughly about 14 a month. So yeah, we're on pace for about 170, which is about where we need to be.
And about any given time, what's the average number of rehabs or ongoing project that you got?
Yeah, I say in some form of construction anytime, we probably average around 8 that we're doing something with. I would say 8 to 12. Usually no more than 12. That's about my capacity. Whether we've just took it down and getting ready to start, to we've got it listed on the MLS, or we have it listed to get leased. So that's kind of our sweet spot. We've got a really good contractor base, but there are a lot of smaller guys that can handle 2 or 3. They can't handle a ton. So I try to keep all those guys, at full capacity when we can. So yeah, we're just a little small player over here.
Well, bottom line, you're super busy. So I appreciate you for making the time and being here today. So let's dial it back. Would you give the audience a quick introductions of Will Hall? Maybe before real estate, what were you
Okay.
doing then?
Yeah, so I was in medical device sales. I did that for about 12 years. Absolutely loved the company that I was with, but the job itself was starting to change and the industry was starting to change, and I was no longer really enjoying what I did day to day. So that's where I really started looking at, like, okay, I want to do something else, and I'd like to work for myself. I really admired the guy I worked for. The company I worked for was a distributor, about 14 people on the team. So he was a small business owner, and I always loved the way he ran his company and did things. I was like, man, I'd like to do something like that, have a little bit more flexibility. I did travel quite a bit, my job, 2 or 3 nights a week. And we have 4 kids now. We had 3 at the time that I made this step, and then we added a 4th. So I knew that as time goes, my wife was working full time, that, I need to find something a little bit more flexibility. So I actually started looking at property management companies and starting a property management company. That's how I first started looking into real estate. And then I quickly realized that I didn't know if I really wanted to do that. So then I'm like, well, let's just flip a couple houses a year, hold a couple rentals. I'll do it on the side as a side hustle. And if it always is a side hustle, that's great. But if it leads to something more, it kind of allowed me the flexibility to do that. And so, fast forward, 7 years, here we are. So it's been a fun ride. But yeah, that's kind of what I was doing before then. And we just slowly built our team throughout the 7 years, and a lot of struggles, a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, a lot of tears. But I feel like we're finally at a really good spot where we kind of found where, as you know, V, when you start this thing and throughout the journey, you think you want to be one thing, and then you realize, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that, and so you do,
Absolutely.
and I did that 2 or 3 times. You're trying to find your sweet spot, so to
Right.
speak. So I kind of feel like we're kind of there, brought a lot of peace, because this is tough, right? To get to this point.
It
So,
is. It is. And I was listening to this book called Good to Great, and they were talking
mm,
about how the sacrifice, like, are you willing to, I mean, he used an example as like, as you grow and you realize that, if your arm has cancer, are you willing to cut off your arm so that you can survive? And sometimes I feel like we have to make those tough decisions every day. I mean,
yeah,
in our
yeah.
business. But the big questions I have for you, or really it's my own curiosity, is how can you be so busy with house buying and still have time for 4 kids?
I'm wanting to know that as well. Yeah. We got a great team. We've been around for, we're going on our 7th year. We just celebrated our 7th year anniversary, and we've got people that have been on our team for 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. So we've built a really good team, and that's allowed me a lot of flexibility. We implemented one of our acquisitions people into a sales manager, and that really took a lot off my plate. And allows me to do that. It's still busy. You still juggle. I always feel like there is no such thing as work-life balance. I think that's a myth. You know what I mean? You just do the best you can, and but it's a lot easier when you got a good team and a good support staff. That allows me, I still run all the project manager, but that has a lot of flexibility to it to be able to work around my schedule and do it when I need to do it. So it's not easy, but you got a good wife and got a good team, and somehow, some way, I feel like now that we're able to spend a lot of good quality time with each other, but we're busy, super busy.
Well, you're someone I look up to. And, I mean, I call you from time to time to kind of get advice from you. I mean, we both started this
At the same
business at
time.
about the same time. And I feel like you really have got this whole operation all figured out, you know?
Well, I, I don't know that I got it figured out, but here's what I do know. And you were just talking about going from good to great and the sacrifice that you have to make. We finally got to a size, the size we're at now, where I realize, like, in order for me to really go to the next level, whether that's going into different markets, growing from a deal volume standpoint, that it would take a tremendous amount of sacrifice. Like we're kind of max, so we would have to kind of break it down. We'd have to break our processes and systems down and rebuild it to do 250 deals instead of 170. Because what got you from here, from there to here is not going to get you where you need to go. And so I just was like, man, I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with doing 170 transactions, but where I want my growth to come from is the passive income. Is like, if we're doing 170 deals and 10% of those I'm holding as rentals, I want to up that to 20 or 30% and keep adding and adding, adding. So I don't know. We may grow a little bit to 170, 180. We may even approach 200. I don't know that, a couple of years down the road, but my main focus is the passive income. And that's where I'm focusing our growth on from this standpoint on. I know we were having a side conversation before we started about, diversifying what that looks like. We're buying our first commercial building, and I don't know what that looks like or how we're going to get there, but that's my big focus and goal.
Isn't that amazing? I talk to a lot of investors, right? And myself included, I'm thinking when we first started, we just want to flip, 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 or
Yeah, yeah.
buy wholesale. We so short-sighted, right? And we go, well, I don't want to hold anything right now because I just want to buy and sell and buy and sell. And then some years later, it hit us, and like we need to build that long-lasting wealth and start accumulating, rentals.
Yeah, but I look at it. I think we did it the right way though, V, because I would love to buy some rentals back in 14 and 15 and 16. I mean, gosh, I look back at, all those deals that we were selling back then, but we didn't have money back then neither. Like you needed cash flow. You needed, like, I'm talking like cash flow by, like, not passive cash flow. You needed, like, you're spending a lot on advertising. You're
Yeah.
trying to grow your business. You're trying to hire people that we just didn't have the money to buy rentals, And so I'm glad we did it the way we passed up a lot of good deals. But I think if our focus would have been on passive income at that point, we didn't have the regular revenue yet to focus on passive. I think passive has to come secondary. You've got to have a good, whether that's your day job, our day job is wholesaling or flipping houses. That's what I do for a living, right? Or whether you're a doctor or whatever, you have to be bringing in money from that standpoint before you can focus on passive. So yeah, we were short-sighted maybe, but we were kind of living in the moment. Like you just wanted to eat,
Yeah. That's a very good breakdown. So today I really want to talk to you about the scaling of the business, because in pursuit of scaling, a lot of people fail or get put out of business. But obviously, when I first met you, you were buying, 5, 6, 7 or so, low volume. Well, less than me at the time, I think.
Yep.
But then suddenly you started buying 100, 120, 130, and here you are, 180. I'd like to maybe dive into that whole process, of what was going on. Did you see that ahead of time, or you just say, well, let's just do 20 now? Tell us about that.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Buzz Vacation Rentals, a premier property management company in Houston and Galveston area. Give Buzz a call at 281-549-8432 to learn more about their rent guarantee program, or check out their website at listwithbuzz.com. Now, back to the Real Estate Baller Show.
Well, really it started with, we did it very organically, and we didn't do it. I never really set out a plan like, okay, I want to get to 170 houses, 8 people, and here's how I'm going to break it down, and here's how I'm going to do it. We just naturally started getting bigger, and organically, I started working myself out of a job one by one by one. And it really just started happening. When I went full-time and I got out of medical device, I had hired a lady that did everything for me, really, that kind of helped me on the admin side and on the follow-up side. I got to the point where I was running all the appointments, and I could keep up with the appointments, but I was running the appointments, locking up the deals, wholesaling the deals. So I was on the dispo side. I was selling my wholesale deals. I was handling that. So I'm handling the transaction with the seller, and I'm handling the transaction with the buyer, and my follow-up started to lack. So then I hired her to do some follow-up. And so she started doing that and some of the follow-up.
So that was your first hire, the lady to help you with follow-up.
That was my very first hire.
Okay.
And to follow up my second one, and I was still taking all the calls, all the incoming calls at that time. My second hire was when I hired a VA who's still with us today, in a different capacity, but she's still with us today. So 6 years ago, I hired her to take all the incoming calls and set all my appointments. And I remember I don't know if I can give this up. Now someone else is running my calendar, so to speak. Right. Yeah. So, but I did. So that was the second hire. So they were like, okay, that helped big time. Now I don't have to answer any incoming calls. And if I miss them and if I'm on an appointment, I don't have to worry about following back up. So I had those 2 done. Well, then I started advertising more, right? So I started increasing my advertising, doing more deals. So now I'm probably doing, to your point, I was probably just doing about 6 or 8 deals a month. But now I'm still buying those and selling those, because primarily we were just wholesaling. I would take one down and flip it occasionally, but primarily, so I'm handling still both sides. So if you think about that, that's 8 deals a month, but that's 16 separate transactions.
Correct.
Between the buy and the that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. So then I hired Noelle, who just through a referral, right? I knew her sister really well. Her sister was our realtor at the time. So yeah, I talked to Noelle. She's getting out of teaching. So then she came in to help me on acquisitions. So we both were doing acquisitions at the time. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that. And then I slowly weaned out of acquisitions. I felt really comfortable. Noelle was stepping up really good. So I would do a little bit, but she was 80 and I was 20%. So then I was just selling all the deals and then doing the doing the project management. Well, then I'm like, man, we're starting to do enough that I don't want to sell these things anymore. I want to, so I hired Amy. Then she came in to be my dispo, and I knew her. She's my brother's sister-in-law. And I just talked to her one day. I was like, I knew she'd be good at this. I'm like, man. So I invited her to, we have a New Year's Day party. I invited her to it, and she came, and I was like, you ever thought about, I just kind of mentioned, if you know anybody that's looking, man, I'm looking to hire somebody part-time, because she had a couple kids, and she goes, of course, I did the whole, kind of Sandler, you probably wouldn't be interested in that, but if you know anybody that does, she said, well, I might be, like, let's talk more about it. So then she started doing the dispo side, and that's when we were probably doing 6 to 8 deals still, maybe 10, but 8 to deals. And then, and then we hired, our second acquisitions person. And then that's when it really started going, and so that's kind of how we did it. We did it one person, one step at a time. And we really hired people. Like, we really started looking at who we're hiring, and a lot of it was internal. Like, our internal hires have been the best. People we've known, people we can trust, people that are reliable. And then we just kind of took it, and we just kind of slowly started organically growing from that standpoint. And then we hired an inside salesperson, and we did some other things. Yeah. And we did some things that didn't work. I hired a project manager. It didn't work. We couldn't keep him really busy enough to justify. And he wasn't good guy, great guy, but we kind of put him in that role, and it just wasn't a good fit. And it didn't work out, and it was complicated. So we failed too.
Okay. When you started making your hire, obviously everyone we bring on more, that's a salary, right? We're responsible for their salary. So how did you make that decision? Do you look at your budget planning, or do you just say, I think we're ready, and just go with it?
Well, there is so we didn't do salaries, right? So a lot of the people, our acquisitions team, I would give them a guarantee, like, hey, we can guarantee you this much for this long. So, 3 or 4 months, I'll give you a guarantee. And then they're fully 1099 commissioned after that, right? And same with our disposition side, so I didn't I had to sell them on us and the possibilities in our environment, in our team. And I also had to catch people. Now, this was also 3 or 4 years ago when the job market wasn't as tight as this is now. Now, for our inside salesperson, we're having to do a salary, right? Obviously, for operations, they're on a salary, and for all those, sales manager, all that good stuff. But these people are 1099. Like, we're hiring as a contractor, and we don't treat them like employees. We treat them like partners, which they are. Like, they don't come in the office every day. We don't treat them like an employee. We treat them like a partner in a 1099. But I've always found once we found good people, like, I take care of them. Like, we just did a contest where they won a free trip to North Carolina. We've given them, our operations person was trying to pay off her school debt. She owed I don't know, $2,300, right? And she had mentioned it one time, like that was a goal she was working towards. So a couple months later, she's phenomenal person for us. We just paid it off for her. We sat down one day, we wrote her a check. Like, it's those little things that get people not to leave and make us better. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with money. It has to do with culture and the way they feel treated and the way they feel. And so, now that we're in a position we're in as a company, like, we're pretty solid as a company. Like, we've grown and we're stable. We got that foundation. Like, I want to help them achieve their goals. And I really want to understand what those are. And if that means they're going to go off and do bigger things than work for us, I'm okay with that. I want what's best for them. And there's a model that says, teach people so they can leave you, so they can be better, go grow themselves, right? But treat people so they never will, right? So teach them to leave you, but treat them good that they won't, and so that's what we try to do. We try to really stand out, from that standpoint. So we built the culture around that, and it's worked. And we've had some failures too. We've had, not a ton, but we've had 2 or 3 people that it didn't work, so we're not perfect by any means, but that's how we've kind of, and we're really good at who we hire now, like, profile wise. Like, we look for a certain person that's not like, I don't want this top performer that's going to kill it for you for a year. He's going to bring you in so much. He or she's going to bring you in so much money, but then they're gone in a year. Because you know what that's like, right? On the acquisition, like, to start, like, I'm looking for someone that's looking for somewhere they're steady at it. Like, they're not looking for the next opportunity every year. They want stability. They want a company that has stability, because you can do a lot more with B players, in my opinion, longevity wise, than you can with A players.
Is it because you feel like you have to manage their egos?
Well, you got to manage their egos, but we just don't have a place we're not a company of 50 or 60 where they can grow inside the company and keep growing and growing. And A players want to grow and grow and grow and challenge and challenge and challenge. Well, we just came to the realization we're not set up for that. And they're going to be gone in 12 months or 18 months if you can't provide that for them. So we just found that, hey, you get a good solid B player in there, but they're steady and they're looking for that stability. You win over time. Maybe not in the first 12 or 18 months. But if your turnover is what kills you in this business, especially for ours, because acquisitions it's not like you can hire somebody that worked for another company that did acquisitions and they can just plug and play. You got to teach them the game a little bit.
Well, you make it sound so simple. Like, okay, I started out with hiring a follow-up, and then I hire a VA, and then I hire, acquisitions and then dispositions. But it's not that. What is it? What's the secret? Well,
No, I mean, look, there's a lot of good luck that comes into that too. Like, I do believe that profiling these people, behavioral profiles and DISC tests and PI tests or whatever you want to use, doesn't matter. Colby, we've used them all, is really understanding, is this person going to fit your culture and going to fit the job to get the job, to get the job done. And how do you manage those people? Like, how do you lead those people? I do have a personality that I'm probably better suited for that. Like a lot of people in our industry are high, what we call, I'm just going to use DISC because I think everybody knows the DISC, but like a high D, right? I mean, entrepreneur, hard charger, you got to run with me. Those typically aren't your best managers, right? When I'm looking for a manager, I'm not looking for this extremely high D person, right? And so I think they struggle with that. And I came to the realization too, like no one's going to care about your business as much as you. So get over that. Like quit being ticked off about that. They don't care. And if you go back and you were an employee, I was a good employee. I didn't care about the business like he did.
Yeah.
The owner. So I think you just got to get over that and be patient, and so I don't know. We've had a lot of good luck. Look, there's no doubt we hired some good people that we already knew and trusted. That goes a long way, and that gave us our foundation and, to keep growing.
So do you have training system in place? Do you actually do, orientations for new people?
So our sales manager onboards everybody now because typically we're hiring, it's in the sales department of some sort, inside sales, acquisitions. She onboards and trains them, and she does a phenomenal job. That was my weakness. I just didn't have the time to onboard them the right way. Yeah. So she onboards them and does all that. As far as the actual sales training, as you know, we do Sandler. I'm big on it. I'm huge on Sandler. I think it's provided us a tremendous amount of growth with our acquisitions team. And we train every week. And we do John Martinez as well. So every other week we do John Martinez, and we kind of tie those. John Martinez is essentially Sandler, right?
Yeah.
But John Martinez throws in like the real estate language to where it really ties into our specific situation. So we do both those. We talk, through those. So you got to train your people. I mean, you definitely got to, develop them both personally and in business to make sure that they're growing,
But if you have to really get into a couple of things of why you were able to make, scale and figure it out, but why other people fail.
Well, business coaches, when we've had a business coach all the way through, that's helped us. And we've had to switch business coaches. Some we've outgrown, I felt like, some maybe that weren't successful or working, but, we had good business coaches. Like, I think that is a big part of it. You can't do it alone. And you need to have good business coaches that can really help you and walk you through that. And you got to give up. You got to know where your weakness is. For me, it's accountability. That's my weakness. Like I have a hard time holding people accountable. So I know now when I hire people or when we have people on our team, I got to have very dependable people because if they're not and they need a lot of accountability, I'm not going to be able to give that to them. And it's not going to be good for them or me. So I think it's, for me, it was about learning the personality thing. It was about, it's learning the behavioral style. How do they like to be talked to? How do they like to be trained? Understanding them and then getting the team to understand, that as well. I don't know. It's not easy. Look, we struggled with it. Like it wasn't easy. Like all this sounds easy. If I ask you about your story, it's going to sound easy on paper, but it's not. But I always did this. if it didn't work out with somebody, we don't fire people around here. We just simply, we come up, we're like, hey, this isn't working right. Let's find out a good exit strategy for you and us both. Like, and we talk about that, and we make sure that people exit out of this company and come into it, the right way. Onboarding was the toughest. Acquisitions for us was the toughest because it was the hardest position for us to onboard. But I've had an operations manager that I've never had to replace. I've had a dispositions manager that's been with us since day one.
Mm-hmm.
So the only turnover we were really having was in lead management. We've struggled there. We hired Mandy's sister, who's helped us in lead management. But we didn't hire her because it was her sister. She was the right person for the job. But it was also like, man, this is somebody we can trust and know somebody's dependable, hardworking, and is going to give it their all. So we struggled. We went through 1, 2, 3 lead managers in a year.
Wow.
And some people will argue, and I will probably say, and I'll be right there with them, that's probably one of the most important roles of the whole company. It really is. It starts there.
Can you give us a quick rundown of the positions, the title, maybe 3 primary responsibility of those titles?
So for us, a lead manager takes all the inbound calls. So any
the
calls,
first contact with the seller.
First contact with the seller, which in this competitive market is everything, because we used VAs in the past, and I think we got away with it for a while, but the market's so competitive that I wanted them to feel like they had someone local that knew their market, knew who they were, where they lived. They didn't have to explain anything. So that was step one. So they take all the incoming calls. She sets all the appointments.
I don't know how you got away with using a VA from overseas, because people still question me sometimes when I used to answer the phone. Are you from here?
Texas is a little different, right? I'm sure in itself, but we're Midwest too. So, but there's not a lot of diversity. And I kind of thought, well, there's so much diversity in this, and we got really good English speaking ones.
Yeah.
But they still have an accent, right?
Yeah.
But I just figured, like, in this day and age, but you're right. But I think it wasn't the accent that threw them off. It's just they could tell they didn't know the area.
Right.
Or they could tell they weren't local just by the way not so much their accent, but by the way they were actually communicating with the seller.
Yeah.
So, and it was hard for us to manage and track them. But anyways, the lead manager takes all the inbound calls, and then does all the follow up with, like, ones that canceled, right? They didn't show, no shows, canceled, or just people that are like, well, I just want to get some information, I'll call you back. It's her job to get those rescheduled and follow up with those. So she's doing all those follow-up calls of reschedules, cancellations, and then all the inbound stuff. And she probably does more than what I actually know. That's really kind of over Mandy's department, but that's initially her job, is to book.
Does she set appointments?
Yep.
Okay.
She sets all the appointments. Yep. So she sets the appointments for our acquisitions team. She's kind of like the quarterback, right? Like, she's looking at everybody's calendar. She even tries to figure out what acquisitions person would be good for this person, right? Like, we have certain people that are better with older people. We have certain people that are better with the landlords, and so she kind of figures that out and puts them. Our acquisitions team strictly goes out and meets with the homeowners, belly to belly, as we like to call it. We don't do anything virtual. Show up to the house. We meet them at the house. We're belly to belly. One of two things happens. They get a contract. Then they process all that over to our operations team. So they get everything uploaded. They're responsible to get that seller to the closing table. Now they don't deal with title companies and all that. Our operations manager handles that, but they still are in direct contact with the seller. If they don't get that house under contract, they have 14 days to follow up with that person. So they're working their follow-up, but they're only working really hot follow-up. After 14 days, it falls into our inside salesperson, who then, after 14 days, does all the follow-up. That's the person that's nurturing those people that just aren't quite ready yet, or, I just want to see what you guys can offer. I've got a tenant coming out in 3 months. I'm not ready to sell yet. I'm just trying to get some ideas and options. She's nurturing that one for the next 3 months. Our inside salesperson only focuses on properties that we've been at and offered on.
Okay. Does your acquisition team analyze the deal? Like, come up with what to offer?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They do all that. So they do all their homework, because we're in such a competitive market too, that it's street by street. and, block by block. So we really want them. I feel like that's the best way to do it. I know some people do it another way. It's worked out well for us. I personally, I always look at it like from an acquisitions. I wouldn't want to go out there just with like, here's my number, right? Because I think you can miss some things like, hey, I know what comps say, but our house is different because of this, this, and this. And they really know their numbers, and it helps them with negotiating there on the spot. They're like, well, I think we can come up because what I saw when I came out here.
But how did you train them?
Well, that's what Rachel does.
Okay.
Right. That's the hard part. That's the hard part about acquisitions. And that's where she onboards them. And there's a lot of hand holding, and it takes, I don't think a lot of time, but I think it takes 6-8 months before they feel really comfortable knowing they've kind of seen it all at that point. They've been into a lot of houses and neighborhoods, and they're starting to see the same stuff over and over.
Okay.
That was my challenge, V. That was the hardest part, was acquisitions. And we've kind of overcome that with Rachel. So Rachel goes out in the field with them now. They train with Rachel for 60 days side by side. And she still goes out and trains with them out in the field, to this day. It's not so much about comps and areas, and it's more about the Sandler process at that point. But yeah, it does take some time.
So Rachel, who has been with you for quite some time, she is now becoming the manager to managing the acquisitions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So then you got the inside sale.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do?
So inside sales just follows up after 14 days. So they just follow up. So in our CRM, it says, hey, we offered 50, they're at 60. We could do 52 is our highest. So she has a number. She already knows without looking up anything. There's a number in there that says what we can buy this house for. And she just nurtures that lead, follows up with that lead, negotiates that lead. And then when she gets them, we always say within 10,000. Like if they're at 130 and we're at 110, and she gets them in that 120 and we're in 10, then we all jump back in. We're like, okay, let's relook at this. Can we find a way to put this deal together? If we can, then she sends it out to our acquisitions person. Our acquisitions person then takes over, gets a contract signed, and handles it just like normal. And then she's out of the picture. He or she is out of the picture and working on the next deal. And that's kind of how we work it. And then she's only working on deals that we've already been there to the house.
Okay, so you got lead manager, acquisitions, inside sales, and then you said operation?
Dispo.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Dispo.
Okay.
Yep. So she's only responsible to sell our wholesale properties we're wholesaling. She works with all of our investors. She does all of our investor calls. She really gets to know our investors. She goes out to all the RIA clubs. She's the one that's out networking. She's the one on Bigger Pockets. She's the one that's drawing all the people in. So she's the face of our selling entity, Nuparadox. People know her at this point more than they know me. So, and she does a phenomenal job. Matter of fact, I went to a RIA about, 6 or 8 months ago, and I'm standing by it. We have a table there. And I was there to present later on the board. And I was just standing there by our thing, talking to people, and someone goes, no, who are you with? I go, Nuparadox. And they're, oh, you're with Nuparadox. Oh, you work for Amy. And I go, yep. I felt like, man, I'm doing something right when but that's what I've always wanted. I wanted to be out where it's not all me. And she's the face of our brand, and she's a very important role. And she's awesome. So that's her role. So she not only sells, but she's driving in traffic and bringing people to us and trying to find those new investors and having those investor calls. She's found us private money investors before, she's helped with that. So that's her role. Operations is Noelle. And, Noelle is really the backbone of the company in a lot of ways, but she handles all of our transactions. So she's kind of like a transaction coordinator. She handles so she works with all the title companies. She works with all of our lenders, or, which, her and I communicate okay, we're going to use this guy on this property. She works with our banks if we're going to refi out of our rentals. She works with our property management companies on everything. If we have a tenant turn, or if a water heater needs replaced, she works with them on that. So she tracks a lot of our rentals. She's in charge of tracking a lot of our rentals. So she really does everything. She's kind of the backbone of that part of it, of tracking everything. So she sits in front of her computer and she got a big whiteboard with everything on it, going on and right in front of her. And her and I are always in daily communication. So she just makes the world go round, as we say, she really does.
Another important role that I hear from other operations a lot is bookkeeping. Do you have an in-house bookkeeper or do you
Well,
outsource?
we do outsource. I'm big on outsourcing, by the way. That's like my, where other investors probably aren't, but we meet with her every Friday at noon. And she's been our bookkeeper for probably 3 or 4 years now. And we meet with her. It's a 20-minute call. We meet with her every week and just make sure, hey, do we have all of our private money where it needs to be? Do we need to withdraw profits from any accounts? Where our rentals are? Is there any rents that haven't been paid? And it's just a quick snapshot of our business. What's our profits for the month? What's our profits for the year? How are we looking from a tax standpoint? We try to pay as little as tax as possible, as everybody does, and we do that by our rentals, right? And the construction of our rentals. So I'm trying to forecast that. And man, I just found since we started doing that, we have no hiccups. Otherwise, it was like, even if we did it once a month, it was like, wait a minute, what do we do here? I can't keep up with these properties. Like,
Absolutely
why didn't we
not.
do? Why didn't we do that? Like, I don't understand. What is this property? Or so if we do it once a week, it's all fresh. And then we do, quarterly meetings with our CPA. I think that's huge, to keep all, because we do have a lot of entities,
Mhm.
we keep everything separate. We have an account just for private money. We have our buy and hold entity. We have our flip entity. We have our profits entity for wholesaling. It's easy for those to get intertwined if you're not careful, and they do from time to time.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's worked out really well. So we outsource that. Same with property management. We outsource that. We've got great property managers now. It took us a while. We had to go through a few to find them. We got really good property managers that we work with. I always said once we got to about as many rentals we have now that we would bring it in house. I have no desire to do it. We're good profitability wise. We don't need to from a profit standpoint. So I'm like, I don't want to mess with that headache right now. So I'm big into outsourcing.
So what else are we missing? What other roles are we missing?
We do have a VA, our VA that's still with us,
Yeah.
that used to do lead management. She now works basically alongside Amy on the dispo. So she uploads all the properties, everything on our Facebook page, everything on our, anything social media wise, she uploads it. She does all the brochures that we send out for, wholesale deals. She does some tracking information for us. So she kind of handles all that. So Amy can not be messing with downloading properties because we get so busy that
Right.
she doesn't have time with it. So she helps. She's kind of Amy's little bit of an assistant that really helps out Amy, but then does if I take a video of a property and need it uploaded, I'll send it to her and she'll upload it to our Facebook page and stuff like that. So then Mandy, my wife, right? So is big time involved on a lot of the internal bookkeeping, records, taxes, managing our marketing, like how much are we going to spend for marketing, managing the lead manager. She oversees that department as well and does all of our financing and refinancing and all that good stuff. So, so she handles, she's looking at all the forecasting of all that stuff. So she's, stays pretty busy, but yeah, so she handles that and does a great job. So
Will, you are one smart SOB. You told me the list of everything everyone does. I don't hear your name in
yeah,
any of them.
I tell you, outside of project management, I'm involved. So I do pipelines every week with our team, and deals that we're working on. Is there another way we can get it? Deals that are coming up. I'm very much involved in that. I'm very much involved in the project management side in our rentals. That's really where my involvement is from there's properties we wholesale. I've never seen them. I don't even know I don't know anything about them. I'm also really good at being hands off too. Like once I have people that I feel like I can trust, I realize there's going to be mistakes, but you got to just be able to look. Like if I get drug into something, like if somebody tells me of a problem or situation we're going through, I'm going to hop in with and probably make a mess of it. And I'm like, you shouldn't have told me. Like, you guys should have figured this out on your own. They're like, oh God, here comes Will. Will knows about it. It's like, but yeah, you're right. You don't hear my name very much, do you? And
No, no, no.
and I've got a lot of women that work for me. Do you realize that? Like, I've got the moms, like they're like if you're a mom, dude, you can multitask like no other. Like they are, there's something about it. We've got one guy on our team. Most of them are moms, not all of them are moms, but I've really worked really well from that standpoint. They're hustlers and they do a great job. They're efficient. They don't have
Yeah.
time to dilly dally.
Yeah. So I know I've asked you this maybe a while back. If you decide to, how many, I guess, how long can you go on a vacations or be away from your business and not have to worry?
Well, the only part that I've got to stay focused on is the project management, which we're really busy at right now. I would probably say 2 weeks. I could probably leave the business for 2 weeks fairly easily. The only part that keeps me, and I enjoy the project management, which is why I really haven't let it go. I like it. It keeps me involved in knowing what's going on in the neighborhoods. It gets me out, seeing the properties. I love working with the contractors. We got a solid group of contractors that I've worked with for a long time. So I don't really have to manage them, but what I do have to do is if we buy a property and we buy it as a rental or as a seller financing, like I don't feel like good enough letting them decide I want to see that and decide like how far do we need to go in this house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of keeps me in there. In the wintertime, when we're a little slower into construction, I can probably even go a little bit longer than that, but I don't need to manage them. It's only when we have a property that's coming on board or
Mm-hmm.
off board that's really crucial for me to be there. For the most part, I walk the property with the contractor before they start, and then I walk it with them when it's done. I rarely go in between. That's how good a relationship. So I don't ever like check around on properties. I'm only there to start and at the end. So I've got it pretty dialed in. And I could I could fill that if I really wanted to. I always look at it like this, like, should I ever get sick? Should my wife, one of my kids, should anything ever happen to where
Mm-hmm.
I needed to step away from the business?
Mm-hmm.
Like not because I wanted to, but because I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I could do that. And that's a really good place for me. Like my attention could be fully on
Yeah.
whatever it needed to be on. I could hire or a construction manager, a project
Mm-hmm.
manager really easily.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could just stop doing projects and just
Yeah.
wholesale for short time being. So yeah, so I think we're getting there. We're doing some things right. Took
Yeah.
7 years.
So you mentioned something earlier, because today, the cold calling or buying on the phone is like circling around, right? It's like all the
Yep.
new people do.
Yep.
But you just said you guys still doing the old school belly button to belly button.
Yep.
Do you feel? I
Yep.
mean, you obviously that's working, right?
It is working. I think if we were really in scale mode, we would have to revert to some other actions, right? Like, but we're not in scale mode from a market standpoint. So we just stay with the tried and true, and direct mail does work for us, and meeting people face to face, like, it's a little bit more competitive. It's more expensive, as you know, like what the cost to buy a house 7 years ago when we started versus the cost now is
Mm-hmm.
outrageous.
Yeah.
But the market's even hotter now than when we started. So I do. I think a lot of those guys are doing cold calling and texting. It works for a certain period of time, but
Yeah.
then everyone, once the market shifts there and starts getting flooded, those guys, I really admire them because they're innovative and they just go to the next big thing. And if you're on the front end of that, it's extremely profitable and extremely successful. But if you're on the tail end of it, I don't know that it is. So
So where do you
I
think
don't
we
know.
are right now?
Look, I've never done a lot of cold calling or text messaging. I'm hearing that text messaging is on its way out from a lot of guys, at least in a lot of markets. It's not as effective. There's a lot of regulations that are starting to be placed, blocking and starting to, those things starting to happen. I think cold calling is extremely effective. It sounds like guys are having tremendous, but you got to be set up. One guy told me, he's like, in order to do cold calling or even text messaging, you have to be set up with a process, system, and people to do that. You just don't switch from direct mail to cold calling. In order to be successful with that, there's a whole process that goes with that. And so I think the guys that can set that up and do it in the right way are guys that are going to be successful in it. If you're just dabbing your feet into it and just your 80% direct mail and 20% cold calling is probably not going to work. You got to be solely focused on it and have a heavy focus on it. But it's not the way I like to conduct a business. We're not really set up and designed to do that. And we're just not doing it.
So
Old
your
school.
business, yeah, old school, but not old.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So your business model, obviously you're very successful. Do you think that same model can work in any market?
No, my model, you mean?
Yes.
I think the thing that I'm really lucky is we're in an extremely good market in Indianapolis because it's very diversified and we can do 3 or 4 different exit strategies. I think that's what's made me successful in this market being so hot is I'm not strictly relying on a wholesale in it. I'm not strictly relying on flipping it. I'm not strictly relying on holding it as a rental. Like we're very diverse. We do seller financing. We do rehabs. We do wholesale. We do flips. So that allows me to do that. Well, California, you can't hold it as a rental, or you can't do a seller financing, and your risk exposure is extremely greater there. So I think we're in a market where I think my exit strategy, yes, will direct mail and work in any market. I do believe it will, and PPC, but like you can't be as diverse in those markets, which is why you see a lot of guys from California trying to be virtual in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they can't do it there. So we're lucky that we're in a market that has several different opportunities for it.
So at this point in your career, you have probably bought over 1,000 properties.
Yeah, for sure.
What has been your biggest mistake that you have made, and how did you get through?
I'll never forget it. And it's been life-changing, was using my own capital to do deals. It was before I'd raised any private money. We didn't really have any connections with hard lenders at the time. We were starting to expand. We were starting to buy more rentals and do more flips. And I got our bank account down to 10 grand. And I'm talking personal business, the whole shebang. Oof. Right. And now it's not like I was just down to 10 grand. That's all I had left. I just had it all in play. Right. I took all my money. It was all out in properties. And it was all good, except one big deal that I had a flip that I had about 250 grand in, got delayed for like 15 days. Oof. Right. Well, I was banking on that. And I had other ones that I had purchased and was going to purchase. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like this screws up I was cutting it way too close. And I just remember going to bed and Mandy going and asking me like, what are you going to do? Like, here we go. We got 10 grand, do our name. And I did not know. And I remember waking up at like 2:30 in the morning, 2 a.m. And I woke up and I mapped it all out. And I had about 2 really good rentals that I would love to have back today. I bought them. I owned them. I had not started construction on them. And I was going to keep them as rentals. And I had to sell them. And I had to sell them to get cash in 7 days. And I had to go to guys that I knew could close in 7 days. And as you know, V, I was on the other side of the table at this point because I had to cut them a deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to move it at a price I know that I can move it. I mapped everything out. And I just remember when I left that morning, I left at 7 a.m, stayed up all night, and I had my plan and I executed it. And I'm like, this, and this, and this has to happen. And I had to shuffle a bunch of things around. We did that. And after that, we started using lenders and private money. I started raising private money. It was just like a light bulb went off. Right. And from there on, I never found myself ever in a position where I was looking at my bank account again, because I would always do it. Well, I mean, I was doing that previous. It just always worked out. Like, okay, we're down to 10, but in like a week, all right, boom, there's 80 grand back. And then I never had a problem where like it always worked out. Well, it just took one little hiccup, one closing getting delayed and I started using other people's money and I started leveraging and I was able to grow and expand. That helped my business tremendously. And from there on, I just kept raising more and more private money, and building lender relationships. And now we don't use any lenders and we strictly use private money, and we still don't use our own money, even though it's there, that may change here shortly in another year or so, but yeah. And I was able to provide those people with a great return. It allowed me to expand
Yeah.
and use leverage on my side. So that was the biggest turning point. Money is always a problem in this business, right? I mean, because it's always coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, and you never want to miss out on an opportunity because you can't get the money quick enough.
That's what I tell everyone too, because I mean, you can use your money to buy this deal, but if you don't have another pipeline for money to come in, the next deal come along, you may not be able to buy it, you know?
And that's it. And
Yeah.
that's it.
And I
And
mean,
that's
and
it.
you and I know how expensive this business is. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
spending thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars on marketing, operations. When you got what, 17 house in inventory,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least $1,000 a house going out every
Yeah.
month, right?
That's right.
So
It's big. I remember when I met with an investor one time before I got started, and I was talking to him about what I was wanting to do. And he goes, yeah, and I was like, man, this guy's killing it. I go, how much you spend a month on advertising? He goes, well, I spend $6,000 a month. I thought, $6,000 a month? I remember telling me, like, this dude spent $6,000 a month on advertising. I'm like, I don't ever want to get that big, here we are 10 times that, right? Like,
right.
that number seems so small, but back then it seems so big, and he
Right.
had like 40 rentals. Now I'll give him credit. I think most of his rentals were pretty much free and clear. So, I mean, he had 40, but but I remember saying he had 40 rentals. I'm like, 40 rentals. Well, I don't know if I need that many, but maybe in 20, 30 years, it'd be nice to have 40, and here we are twice the size of that. So these numbers start to look, but it's just funny when you first begin how big and scary these numbers are.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that now, not so much.
Yeah, talking about big and scary. So do you have a funny story or maybe a proud moment that you would like to share with us?
I don't know. Do I, V?
Huh? Are we really gonna go there?
So, so I meet V 7 years ago, and what's really cool about our story is we've been very good friends ever since, right? And I think this really had a lot to do with it, right? Just we're at a conference, real estate investor conference, and you and I, meet each other, and we go out with a group of other investors who are much more seasoned than you or I. Matter of fact, you and I might have been the biggest rookies there. So I don't even know that you and I, we definitely hadn't done a deal yet as far as closed on it.
No.
Maybe you had one under contract, I think.
Yeah.
So we're brand new. I think this is like in June, the same month that I kind of started in, like officially doing this. And so we go eat this really nice restaurant, right? At least it seemed really nice at the time. A really nice restaurant. And I'm on a budget, I just, I'm just starting this business. I just spent all this money on a hotel flight to get here. I haven't made a dime yet. So I'm like eating chicken tenders, drinking water, maybe having a Bud Light or Miller Lite. And we're with all these seasoned guys. And, the next thing you know, they're like, hey, let's do credit card roulette. And I'm like, oh, gosh. But there's like, what, maybe 12, 16 of us,
It was a long table. Yeah.
It was a long table. And I'm a little bit of a gambler, and I'm thinking like, odds are in my favor. Like I shouldn't be out of pocket on this. So I'm like, and I didn't want to be the guy's like, I don't want to do that. I'll just pay for my own. I didn't want to be that guy, right? You just go with the flow. Joe Cool, right? So we all throw our credit cards in there. And out of 12 to 16 people, I get down to the final three. So I'm worried at this point because I know this is gonna be a big tab because these high rollers weren't eating chicken fingers.
Was it
they're
down
eating
to 3
steak.
or down to 2? Down to the finalists.
I think I was final 3. I think I was down to the final 3. I don't think I made it down to the final 2. And man, when they pulled my name, I might as well hit the lottery. I was so happy. My heart was I was like,
I still remember you were dancing.
I was dancing.
You were jumping up and down.
Oh, I was so happy because I knew this bill was going to be over $1,000. And the lucky winner was V. She got the one. So she bought my dinner either the first or second day that I probably met you. And I just remember thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not her. And the whole table's laughing, and there's nothing better than having a rookie pick up the tab And you were a good sport. You were a lot better sport than I was.
Well, I mean, I didn't bawl crying or anything, but I think the restaurant, the waiter felt so bad for me. I think they pulled me one of those expensive whiskey shots.
Oh, well, 'cause that was a big tab, right? That was
It
1,000
was.
plus.
And the funny story was, I mean, it happened. So I thought, okay, fine. I guess I'll just really have to get this down so I can afford to pay this bill, because I mean, we got to pay. Like, I didn't have to fly there. I mean, I drove, but,
Yeah.
hotel, ticket to the event and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So months later, I was going through my receipt and I found that tab and I said, what was this? What was I doing? Why did I pay for this expensive thing? It's
What
like
did I do? That was yeah. So even when we get together some of those other investors, it's always like, I can't help to bring it up. So that was my introduction to V. And no, it's been great, honestly. Your friendship and watching us grow really in different ways, right? You kind of went one direction at the beginning. I kind of went a different. You were flipping at the beginning and doing some things, and I was wholesaling, and then we've kind of changed a little bit, but both have been extremely kind of successful. We've kind of done it our own way. So that's what I love about this business. You meet so many cool people, and what was really cool at the beginning, like meeting people like you and some of the others, is like we were in this together,
right?
Like, man, like, and I don't know, there's not a lot of us left that were started at the same time. A lot of people fail in this business.
Well, you've been doing all these amazing things. So what's next for you, Will?
My biggest focus really is on our capital businesses. We're now that I've freed up my time on this space, is I'm trying to grow our capital business, which is basically brokering for commercial capital. I'm going to make a run at it and see if we can do it. It's kind of like a side hustle for me right now. So I'm trying to grow that. I'd like to grow that, to 2 or 3 people, something like that. But like, we have so many connections with deals, but money's the other half that people need, and I don't want to just work on fix and flip deals. I want, like multifamily, bigger deals. And I'm learning a lot about capital along with it, that because I didn't have that background. So I'm trying to grow that. That's the H4 Capital there. See, get the plug on there.
All right.
And then and really just focusing on our rentals. It's growing our passive income. I want to get our passive income to surpass our income that we do on the flip and wholesale side. So that's a big goal for me.
Make sure you send me the link to your capital, your lending company, so that way I can include it in the show notes.
Got it.
All right. So we're wrapping up here. What is the one thing that people might be surprised to learn about you?
Anything?
I
have cows. I bet you don't have too many investors on here that have cows, do you?
No, not many. Actually, you actually deliver too, right? You help them deliver?
That's right. So we live on a small little farm, and we have show cattle. So our kids show cattle, and we raise some show calves just primarily for us and as a hobby. So we got the chickens and the cows, and then our 2 boys are into racing now, so we're doing quarter midget racing. So that's what I'm saying. This is a busy time for us. So the farm is for some people it's a boat, golf course, whatever, like on a tractor, feeding cattle, working on cattle. That's how I let out like all the stress. Like I don't worry about anything when I'm out there. That's my oasis, if you will. So that's what I enjoy doing when I'm not working.
Okay. So last questions. How does the audience get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, you can always reach out to me directly. You can go to Will at h4capitalllc.com and shoot me an email or .net, sorry, and shoot me an email, or newparadox.com is where you'll find our company. You'll find my information there. You can always contact me there as well. So always happy to help out any way I can.
Thank you, Will, and thanks for watching the Real Estate Ballers Show. If you found value in this show, please share it with a friend. And feel free to give us a shout out on social using the hashtag REBallers, or just tag us on your post. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. If there's any topic that you want us to cover, please send us an email to info@reballers.com or leave a comment below. See you next time.